Welcome to Conversations on the Coast, the Bay Area's premier author interview program. And today we're going to talk about a book called Death of the Mantis. It's a Detective Kubu Mystery published by Harper. And it actually begins with a mystery. The author is Michael Stanley, and he's in the studio, and he's two persons. And Michael Stanley, and this is beautifully said in the front of the book, Michael Stanley is the writing team of Johannesburg natives Michael Sears and Stanley Trollip. Sears lives in Johannesburg and teaches part-time at the University of
the Witwatersrand.
Thank you very much. That's well said. Trollip, who sounds like a Russian, was on the faculty at the Universities of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, Minnesota and North Dakota, and at Capella University. Where's that?
Capella University is a completely online university, web-based university.
Ooh.
About 30,000 students now, and
Holy
headquartered
cow.
in Minneapolis.
Uh-huh. So, and then it goes on to describe the singular Michael Stanley. It says, a full-time writer, he divides his time between South Africa and Minneapolis, Minnesota.
That's correct.
So there you are. And so now you're joined again together at the hip as we do this interview. So be careful.
We're always careful.
How did this get started, Stanley? Michael?
Well, it was a long time ago, actually, a very long time ago. Stan is a pilot, and he did a number of fly-in trips into various parts of southern Africa with friends, and we met actually in Minnesota. And then he took me on a number of these trips, filled the plane with friends and wine, and we saw on one occasion a pack of hyenas tearing apart and completely consuming a wildebeest. Oh. And we thought, as one does, what a great way to get rid of a human body if you wanted to get one completely eliminated.
It's the first thing I'd think of.
Exactly. I mean, it was the first thing we thought of too, certainly after a glass or two of that wine.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, being academics, it took us a little while to get round to actually planning out the mystery, 30 years to be exact. But then we got going.
And a lot of wine.
Probably quite a lot of wine.
A lot of wine. Now, this is the third book in what's called on the cover a Detective Kubu Mystery. This is the third book. When did the first one come out?
First one, called A Carrion Death, came out in 2008. The second, called The Second Death of Goodluck Tinubu, came out in 2009. And this one was released last month.
Last month?
Yes.
Oh, we got you right at the start. Wow. Do you have a favorite, Michael, among them?
Among the books?
Yeah.
Well, we both like this one a lot. I suppose it's the usual story, you know, the latest one.
It's like The Last Child.
Exactly,
The
Last Child.
Yeah.
And we just think this one really, we got it together.
Kubu is a fascinating character, I think. I mean, the fact that he's not only a detective in this book, but also a fellow who's married, has recently had a child, and has all of the problems surrounding that. Has, you know, a home situation that's not entirely comfortable. He's away too often. He doesn't spend enough time with either child or wife. And you weave that right into the story. I think it's a heck of a good job.
Thank you very much. We thought it was important for two reasons to have Kubu enjoy a domestic life. The one is that it is sort of symptomatic of a lot of the Botswana culture. Family life is important, and families and extended families are very important. And then from a dramatic point of view, there's enough bad stuff going on in a detective's life that having a sort of a juxtapositioning of something a little calmer, albeit with perturbations, is something I think good dramatically.
Yeah, it really works very, very nicely. I think it gives it a quiet sense of realism that, you know, in many detective mystery type of things, the detective or whoever they are kind of lives someplace else, not in our world, not in anything that seems real, a special world where they're king or queen, and
and often is ultimately flawed.
Yes, that's true.
Not that Kubu is perfect, we must say. He's a little bit too fond of his food and wine, I think.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. He's like, the British who, love to eat breakfast, and he really pines for that. And
Doesn't everybody like to eat breakfast?
yes, they do.
Well, it's true that Kubu likes to eat breakfast, but then he likes to eat all meals, so that fits in pretty naturally.
And he's getting a little fat around the waist. Yeah.
Just a tad.
Yeah, just a little bit. He has a lot to contend with in this book, and a lot of people to play off in the book. And we're going to look at some of those characters and situations when we come back.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Follow us on Twitter at JimFosterCoc or send an email to jimfostercoc@gmail.com.
Death of the Mantis, a Detective Kubu Mystery is the book we're talking about today. And Michael Stanley, who is really Michael Sears, and Stanley Trollip have joined us, coming all the way from Botswana?
South Africa, at least.
South Africa. Okay.
Right.
Very good of you to do that. But I hear you're doing a major American tour.
Well, it's very expensive to come to the States from South Africa, so we may as well maximize our time trying to get readers to know about Detective Kubu.
Okay. Now, we need to know the basic plot here. People are getting murdered all over the place. Kubu is kind of overwhelmed by the amount of crime that he's facing there. Actually, when it's all said and done, 3 murders take place in the desert. And there's a question about who did it, of course, and motivation. And Kubu's very much into motivation, I think.
Well, the first murder, of course, is the opening of the book, and that is where a ranger is discovered at the bottom of a ravine, apparently seriously injured, surrounded by 3 Bushmen. And the Bushmen and their culture form the backstory of the book. And
it's a very important and it's a very informative backstory.
Thank you. Well, we hope so, because that was one of the reasons that we built the mystery this way. It turns out that the ranger has actually been attacked and subsequently dies, and the Bushmen are arrested. Kubu gets involved in the case and is concerned that the Bushmen are being railroaded, because there's no real evidence that they were involved in this other than that they're there and there are no tracks of anyone else. So he gets them released. But then, as you say, not long afterwards, another person gets murdered, and that person could have also been murdered by Bushmen. And this gets Kubu, of course, very concerned that perhaps the Bushmen were the real culprits, or what's going on. And he tries to track that back into Namibia, which is the neighboring country to the west. Then a third person dies, and it gets very complicated, and eventually Kubu has to go into the desert himself to try and resolve those motivations and the culprits as you described it.
One of the great things that you get across when you develop this background story, if we should call it that, about the Bushmen, is how their cosmology, if you will, is so different from ours. They believe and live in a way that they use the things of the earth. They do not destroy them. They do not use them up. They're forever leaving stuff behind for other people. What an interesting point for our times, huh?
I think so.
Pretty amazing.
The Bushmen historically have been at the receiving end of extreme racism, if you like, from both the blacks and the whites, as those two groups came into the area of Botswana. And as you mentioned, the Bushmen really believe that the earth belongs to all, whereas the whites and the blacks believe they can own part of the earth. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of a fundamental clash in real life as well as in our mystery.
The mystery or the cast also includes an American journalist by the name of Cindy Robinson, a character I did not like. I thought
Kubu did.
That's right, Kubu did. Yes. Yeah. Now, the third fellow who got murdered is a fellow whose last name I won't pronounce correctly. His first name is Wolfgang. That's clear enough. And then his last name is
Haka.
Haka. Oh, yeah. Pretty good. And Haka is a Namibian geologist, or so he poses. And he's, I guess, the darkest character, isn't he?
Well, he's certainly an ambivalent character, and motivated by a number of different things. And of course, he's a character who works his way through the book, particularly in the middle section, as one of Kubu's targets.
Yeah, definitely a target.
But he's basically greedy.
For sure.
Well, greed is an obsession, actually, for him. I think that's your point about it being dark.
Yeah. That's true. But, but he finally gets murdered, too, and you almost applaud.
It seems you disliked a number of characters in the book.
Well, I found them interesting. I just didn't happen to like them.
Oh, we like it when readers have strong feelings about the characters.
Good. The other character who is in the book throughout is the desert, and the various ways that people look and experience the desert. The Bushmen, of course, experience it as home sweet home.
And a friend, in fact.
Yeah, a friend. And everybody else is scared of it or threatened by it. Or
probably correctly so.
Yeah, it's a dangerous friend. You have to stay on the right side of it, otherwise it can turn on you very easily.
But the Bushmen just go at it, so to speak. I mean, they feel comfortable there.
The Bushmen are generally regarded as the oldest human group on the planet. Genetic studies show that we all have some connection to that area. And as they got squeezed by the black and white groups coming in there, they had to move deeper and deeper into the desert, and consequently had to live with the little that exists there and turn it to their advantage.
Well, we have one more segment to go, and if I can be persuasive, maybe I can't be, we may find out who done it. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Follow us on Twitter at JimFosterCoc, or send an email to jimfostercoc@gmail.com. Michael
Stanley is our guest today. He is the author of The Death of the Mantis, a Detective Kubu Mystery, the third of such mysteries. And, of course, Michael Stanley is Michael Sears and Stanley Trollip. And we're no longer confused. I got them right in front of me here. They're two different guys. Really wonderful. There are a couple of terms that are used in this, but I had no idea what the heck they were. One is copies, spelled Koppies. Stanley?
Koppies is an Afrikaans word meaning small hills, and it is incorporated into South African English as well.
Okay. And then there's one I'll never be able to pronounce. Knobkierie.
Yeah, that's good. Knobkierie.
Hey, let them know I did that good.
Very close.
Okay. And it's some kind of a weapon.
Knobkierie is a weapon typically made from a straight branch of a tree, and then at the other end is a large knob, often cut out of the trunk. So it is a weapon that you hold the sort of thin end, and smash the
Bash-
other end
bash
against
with the
against an animal. Typically, the Bushmen would do, but
not in this book.
Not in this book.
Not in this book. Well, one of the things I'm always interested in when we're doing these interviews is how does the book sound? And the best way to get that sound is to have Michael Stanley read from the book. And I believe you're going to set it up.
Yes, the book is about contemporary Bushmen, but in order to give readers a sense of what traditional Bushmen were like who were nomadic, we have a prologue that is set 60 years ago. Michael's going to read just a short part of that, and it refers to the place. The place is a fictitious sacred area in the Kalahari, but it is modeled after a true sacred place in the northwest of Botswana called Tsodilo Hills, which the Bushmen regard as where the gods brought humans onto the earth and where there are 4,500 Bushmen rock paintings.
Okay, Michael.
The desert glowed in the dawn light. The Bushman boy woke from a deep sleep, still tired from the exertions of the last days. His father was already up, standing like a sentry, watching the sun creep above the horizon. "We must go on, Gobiwasi," he said. "We will reach the place today. We must travel while it is still cool. Here, chew on this as we go." He handed the boy a chunk of hoodia. For the boy it had been a journey of heat, of sun, of exhaustion, as he tried day after day to keep up with his father. But he had offered no complaint, and now felt the thrill of discovery ahead. Today he would be at the place. Very few people had ever seen it or even knew about it. He gathered up his few belongings, gnawed the root, and tried to match his father's easy pace. After about an hour his father stopped and pointed silently ahead of them. Gobiwasi could see what appeared to be a small hill on the horizon. He looked up at his father, and the man nodded. Then they set off again. At last they came to the hills, a group of koppies rising out of the desert. They passed between them until they came to one in the center of the group, a solitary hill with a rocky cliff facing them to the east, steep slopes to the west. It was uniformly high, north to south, showing caves and recesses from bottom to top in the cliff. They rested in the dappled shade of a scrubby acacia and ate and drank a little. Then Gobiwasi's father said it was time. First they went to a large overhang in the center. There his father pointed out paintings of ancestors, men and women dancing, thin-legged, watched by gemsbok, eland, and springbok, gorgeous and strange representations that left the boy awed and a little afraid. Low down on the right, a lion, teeth unnaturally large, with a black mane and a long tail, seemed to growl at him. Then they climbed to a cave many yards off the ground. The walls were black with soot, and on the floor lay a human skeleton, bones picked clean. Spread around it in a spiral were the contents of a hunting bag: spear, bow, delicate arrows, knife, cord, sandals that looked as if they would fall from the feet at the first step, leather-topped hollow root for holding the arrows, and several horns that Gobiwasi knew had contained poisons. To one side was a toy bow with small arrows, a child's precious possessions, and 2 necklaces of cocoons containing pieces of ostrich egg shell that rattled in dance. A bushman's entire life lay on the floor. The boy wondered whose life. They climbed farther. Gobiwasi, scared of the height, afraid of slipping and falling. His father scampered up to the topmost cave, almost perfectly round at the entrance and perhaps 5 yards deep, and waited there. When the boy joined him and had caught his breath, his father took him by the hand and led him past a crowd of people watching from the walls, red people and brown people, adults and children. Animals watched too, and a strangely shaped white fish that Gobiwasi did not recognize. For the next few hours his father told him about the spirits and about the ancestors, visiting different caves and pointing out important paintings. Then they climbed down, and his father showed him a hidden spring at the back of a small cave, from which they drank.
This is really a rite of initiation, and that's what it sounds like.
Exactly.
And
That is exactly what it is.
will be expected to carry part of the burden of the tribe or the group. And of course, he comes back in the story much later on as a mature individual. And the Bushmen are very admirable as you write them. Very admirable.
And very interesting and very persecuted, and I think in traditional ways not long for this planet.
I don't think so either. How many of them are there? Does anybody know?
We think that there are about 150 to 200,000 people who would call themselves Bushmen, of which perhaps 200 are traditional nomadic Bushmen.
Living
in the Central Kalahari Game Reserve.
Oh, my goodness. Whew. The point of it all is that, I mean, the amazing thing about the book, it's all that we've discussed when we focused on the Bushmen, I think, because I was fascinated by it. But it's also a great mystery. It's a great whodunit, and there are poisoned arrows and a lot of other neat stuff.
One of the great benefits for mystery writers with the Bushmen is that they have a variety of poisons, many of which are so obscure that they're unknown to science, and they don't have antidotes. So that's a big help, as you can imagine.
The book is called Death of the Mantis. The author is Michael Stanley, who, of course, as you now know, is two very fine gentlemen. And it's a Detective Kubu Mystery published by Harper. This has been Conversations on the Coast, and I'm Jim Foster.
Follow us on Twitter at Jim Foster COC, or send an email to jimfostercoc@gmail.com.